love the beautiful imagery and passion you see in that video. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Cantor and it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you today for She's on Q. Thank you for prioritising this time with our esteemed speakers to discuss the Wellbeing Trio. Today we'll be focusing on helping you nourish your mental, physical and financial health so you can fully take charge of your well-being and, you could say, invest in you. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which today's event is taking place. We're on Minjin land and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. A special welcome to any First Nations people joining us today. I'm Liz Cantor and I'm honoured to be in the driving seat for today's discussion. I'm a TV presenter for Channel 7. I present the weather for 7 News, the Lotto and Powerball draws, and I'm lucky enough to be on lifestyle shows Creek to Coast and Weekender TV. I've worked in live television for over 15 years now and I'm an open book today in regards to answering any of your questions. I've also won 2 reality TV shows and come from a background of competitive surfing where I travelled under a sponsorship from Billabong for many years. I really hope today that I can not only share my wellbeing tips but also, like you, learn from the incredible speakers we have here. Today's virtual event is being live streamed and it will be available to view later today using the same link you're using now. By joining us, you're investing in equality through financial empowerment and professional development. The more you know, the more confident you become and the more you can feel empowered to take control of your future. For our final She's on Q event for the year, you'll be hearing from 3 highly skilled women in the fields of finance, leadership and well-being. They will share with us their in-depth knowledge and experience. And at the end of this event, we'll be answering questions. Please be aware that what we share today are the views of the presenters and any information you hear is provided for educational purposes only. The information or opinions don't substitute for personal financial advice. So should you want to action any suggestions you hear, please consult a professional advisor before making any changes to your financial affairs. Now, let's find out a bit about our special guests. First is Juliet Redding, a financial advisor and director of Redding Fry Financial Advice. Welcome, Juliet. Can I ask you to kick off with telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Liz. Yes, I've been in the financial services industry for about 24 years. I started off in stockbroking and I was in stockbroking for about 12 years and I absolutely loved it. I worked for companies such as Nevitz, Morgans, RBS, Morgans, Macquarie. But when I was with Morgans, I actually was really drawn to financial advice. So I moved across to Q Invest, which was the financial advice for QSuper members. And I worked in the Toowoomba office for 8 years, providing comprehensive financial advice. This year I started my own business, which was very exciting for me. So I could continue to provide comprehensive advice face-to-face for Queensland government employees, mainly QSuper members, but now to the wider public. You know, with that I'm also a mother, a wife, I work full-time, I study part-time. So, you know, mental well-being, physical well-being is really important to me so I can continue to provide financial advice to my clients and to provide them with financial well-being.
Incredible, Juliet. I can't wait to learn more about this. Now we'll move to Marissa Heggie, Senior Manager of Employee Relations and Wellbeing at QSuper. Marissa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm the Senior Manager for Employee Relations and Wellbeing and as it says on the box, I'm responsible for our workplace wellbeing programs at QSuper. I've worked here for a number of years with lovely people like Juliet. I've been lucky enough to work with in the past. But I think in my next life I want to come back as Liz Cantor because that career sounds fantastic. I'm exceptionally envious. So yeah, definitely that's my objective in my next reincarnation.
The surfer bit or the...
surfer bit.
All right, well maybe I'll have to take you for a surf this weekend. Thanks, Marissa. Our third guest is Dr. Gina Cleo, habit scientist and dietitian. Gina, tell us more.
Thanks, Liz. I trained as a dietitian and after a few years of working in my private practice and working in various hospitals, I decided to go back and do my PhD in habit change because I was really interested in sustainable and long-term change. And that really set off my career in this wonderful world of why we do the things we do, why we don't do the things that we want to do, and really understanding human behaviour. So I currently run the Habit Change Institute, where I have the pleasure of teaching everyday people and coaches all about habits, how to change habits, how to form new habits. And I also work at Bond University as an academic, where I teach habits into the medical curriculum, so our up and coming emerging doctors understand the power of habit change.
You really strike me as someone who has a huge desire to know more about everything in life. I can't wait to dive deeply into this later today.
Thank you.
QSuper recently partnered with research firm Ipsos to understand the financial well-being of working Queenslanders, finding that only 46% of women surveyed felt confident about managing their finances. On the flip side, some of us might be thinking about what we want to achieve with our money in 2022. Whether that be more savings, a big purchase, or getting a better deal. A quick reminder before we dive into this topic that anything mentioned by Juliet or our other guests is general advice only, and it may not be the right fit for you. So Juliet, Christmas and summer holidays seem to be the most difficult time of year to manage finances and spending. I'm sure everyone watching will agree with this.
Yes.
I spent way too much money at the shops over the weekend because I love giving and I love giving presents to people. How can we survive the silly season without building up credit card debt?
It is a difficult time, and so the most important thing is to be prepared. It's very easy to leave everything to the last 5 days before Christmas, to walk into the shopping centre and to be completely stressed about what you're having to do. You hit the panic button and you start spending. So being prepared and making sure that you understand how much you do have to spend for Christmas. Make a list of who you're buying for. The name, what you're thinking of buying, how much you're going to spend, and be realistic. And then the next column is how much you do spend. So have a tally on what you're going to be spending for presents. And then, you've got to remember that you still have your December bills coming in that you have to pay. You've got your January bills coming in, and also kids going back to school. So be very careful with credit cards and Afterpay and Zip Pays, things like that. It's very easy to overspend on those types of payment options. So, in general, we are spending probably something like 28% more when we use those options. If you can put it in the funds that you're going to be using to purchase Christmas presents into a savings account and just use that. Be savvy with what you're doing. There's been the Black Friday sales and the Cyber Monday sales and things like that. Try and, be careful with how much you're spending, and also be creative. I think, with COVID, I think we're a bit over the expensive gift thing. Make a little batch of bickies with the kids and put it in a bag, and then write a Christmas card with what's really been important to you about that person this year. They might have been there and helped you through difficult times while, we haven't been able to be with family and friends. And if you haven't been able to see that person, then, write how much you've missed them. I don't think we really need to spend huge amounts at Christmas time.
Juliet, that's such a beautiful suggestion and something I wish I'd considered before going crazy at Black Friday sales. My problem is I look at what I'm saving in those sales, not what I'm spending, and I think, I'm saving this much money, and it gets me. But
just making sure that when you've got your amount that you've got to spend on somebody, you've got the next column as to how much you've spent, and then if you're overspending on someone, you're going to underspend on someone else. So try and keep it.
Check that intentionality, right?
Yes, keep it real, keep it realistic.
For many of us, it's too late to plan for Christmas spending. So if you go overboard this year, how can you recover in the new year? How do you get ahead of it before next Christmas?
That's really important, and I think too the most important thing is that if you're finding after Christmas that you've run up a lot of debts and you're feeling panicked or you're losing sleep over that, that's really important to reach out and try and get some help. I think some little tips is to sort of go through the debts that you have and make sure that you sort of put down, how much your debt is, what the interest rate is that you're paying and how much the minimum is, and then try and sort them out so that you've got the smallest amount with the highest interest rate first, and then just pay the minimums on the rest of them and then really focus on paying down that first debt. Once you've got that under control, move to the next one. And it might be, look, January is a fantastic time to go through your cupboards and your shed and get things onto Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace or whatever it is, and sell things. Try and put that on the debt. You might need to do a few extra shifts here and there to try and get some extra cash flow coming in. A lot of people are still paying off Christmas in March, so it's really important that if that's been the case, think about next year and start talking about it now. Make sure you are planning and saving a little bit each time, and talk to the family. Oftentimes people don't want the big expensive gifts. They might just want a holiday away from Christmas and just go away and spend it on a holiday instead.
That's a really good point. You mentioned about interest rates and creating that list. Sometimes I find, and I'm not sure if anyone can relate to this, I'm a little bit overwhelmed with breaking down the interest rates and exactly what they mean and finding those rates. What would you recommend in this situation?
Oh, look, you do need to do a little bit of a homework around it and deep dive, but you should be able to find the interest rates on the on your credit cards, on the afterpays and the minimum amounts. So it's just a matter of doing a little bit of research around it. I think too, if you actually take control of the situation and you start positively working towards a plan around it, it makes it so much easier from a wellbeing perspective. You sort of feel a little bit more in control.
Often the hardest thing to do is get off go and create momentum.
Yes, that's right. Knowledge is a great thing, but you actually have to take action to make something happen.
What are some simple first steps to learn more about investing and how to build wealth?
Look, understanding financial literacy is probably important. So understanding about interest rates, the compounding effect of investments, your risk profile and diversification in investments, that's always a good thing. So starting to sort of create a knowledge base, and I know a lot of my clients are really interested in the Barefoot Investor, and they read what he says. He has a very simple sort of strategic way to approach things, which is great. So reading and understanding things, but as I said, knowledge is only the first part of it. Then once you've sort of got that understanding under your belt, the next step is to actually get personal financial advice around what's going to be the best investment for your situation, your timeframes, your goals and objectives. And then once you've done that, sit down and have a look if you're comfortable with the recommendations, the fees and the costs involved and the risks that you're going to be taking when you do invest into that product.
I love that you said that, because I've often thought in my life, I hate that saying, fake it till you make it. Because I feel with that saying, true confidence doesn't come naturally. I think you need that knowledge, and with that knowledge comes confidence. So if you feel like you're faking it in a situation, which for me is often finances, read the Barefoot Investor, go out there and get more knowledge. It's a really good point, Juliet.
Yes, thank you. It is, and I think financial literacy is very low in Australia, but it is also very low globally, so we're not alone in that, and everyone can benefit by having a little bit more knowledge in those areas.
Knowledge is power, knowledge is confidence. Juliet, what's your favourite set and forget strategy to build wealth for a beginner?
Oh, I actually don't believe in set and forget. Because the thing about investment and investment markets is they're changing all the time, and our own personal situation changes all the time. We move from being single to being a double to being like kids involved and all of those sorts of things. And so your situation's changing all the time. Financial markets change all the time, and the economy and legislation changes. So I don't think that there is a set and forget, and I'm sure Jean is probably going to say it. You do need to actually build routines around your financial health and well-being. You do need to be looking at things on a regular basis, checking through and reviewing on a 6-monthly basis how things are going, and do I need to increase this or decrease that, and making sure that you actually have a good routine around your financial situation and not set and forget. Sorry.
Often property and shares are the first thing that comes to mind when building wealth. What are some other strategies to consider? I know the property market has just gone crazy over COVID in the last 2 years. Many people have found themselves with equity in their homes and wondering what to do with it. Do you recommend enlisting someone with a better skill set like yourself?
Look, I think property and shares were the traditional go-tos for probably the older generation. But those types of investments are also, they're very time consuming. You do have to take on high levels of debt to get into property now. They're not very diversified. There's high amounts of risk with those types of investments. I think we're lucky nowadays because we've just got, a lot more diversity in the types of investments we can choose. And we've got the ability to be able to invest online, which makes it so much easier and more cost effective. So we've got things like managed funds, you've got EFTs, you've got investment bonds, and the most important one, which I've neglected to say, is your superannuation. Because your superannuation is something that it's actually your biggest investment over your house. Because the thing about it is it has to provide you with a comfortable income when you can no longer work. So it's probably one of those primary investments that you have to take care of. Investments in property and shares, of course, they do have their place for certain people, but they're not the best option for everybody. So definitely seek advice and check out what other options you do have.
I'm in my mid-30s, but if I could go back to my 20s and give myself any advice, it would be to, at 20s, start focusing on retirement funds.
Oh, yes.
Because I can only imagine if I actually had paid more attention back then, little investments would have grown so much by now. So do you feel that way, that if you could turn back time, you'd start thinking about retirement earlier?
Oh, my goodness, if I could turn back time, there'd be a lot of things I'd change. Just
hindsight is a powerful tool.
It certainly is. And wouldn't you love to just turn back the clock and do everything right? I'm not sure that we would, though. But the thing about it is that, it is an important thing. And those small levers that you pull today make such an incredible difference in the future. So it's never too late. You really need to start engaging with your superannuation now and making sure that those small levers that you pull today, they can have incredible and powerful effects in 10, 15, 20 years' time. Yeah.
Which is exciting to think about.
It is, it is.
Thank you so much, Juliet.
That's okay.
Just a reminder that if you have a question for Juliet, please click on the speech bubble at the bottom of the screen and include Juliet's name with your question. We'll be answering those questions at the end. So I think everyone can agree that 2021 has been a big year, and with border closures, many of us haven't taken as much annual leave as in previous years. According to research firm Roy Morgan, Australians now have record high levels of annual leave saved up, totaling more than 175 million days. That's incredible. How can we take care of our mental and emotional well-being and make sure we don't burn ourselves out? And how can people leaders help their team members maintain their well-being at work? With this, we're going to go to Marissa. Marissa, what are some of the activities that fall under workplace well-being?
You make a really good point. Wellbeing is so critical to organisational success, and we know when organisations invest in the health and wellbeing of their people, they perform better. We know when we don't invest in health and wellbeing, we're 4 times more likely to lose talent. We'll see increased absenteeism, increased presenteeism, and all of that results in poorer results for our members. So we make these investments in wellbeing because they pay dividends for us down the road. At QSuper, we talk about there being 5 domains of wellbeing, and we talk to physical health, mental health, social connection, financial health and work. And all of those things need to be in balance throughout our lives to really contribute to us being happy and healthy and able to participate in our social and work lives to the best extent. But a really, really important part of the wellbeing framework at QSuper that I love is that we talk about what you can do for yourself and what you can do for others, because there are things within our control that we can absolutely change. We can all exercise more and eat better and get more sleep and connect with our friends and colleagues. But what you can do for others is critical to supporting the mental health and the physical health, the well-being of everyone around you. And as a leader, that what you can do for others is really important and forms a fundamental part of our framework.
Busy used to be such an ideal for women. You'd do the school pickup and you'd be wanting to run in and comment on how busy you've been, but there's no point in being busy if you're not being effective. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree, and it's the worst question to ask in a lift. How are you? Busy is everyone's response. And I think it always needs to become, hey, what are you doing this weekend? What's keeping you happy and healthy? Because when we focus on talking about those things that are keeping us busy, we lose sight of perhaps getting the balance right.
So I wrote this question for you last night. How do you avoid the trap of spinning the wheels? How do you continue to be high capacity, high output, high performance without getting that feeling of burnout?
I'm exhausted just hearing that description.
I set the bar high.
Yeah, you did. And it's really hard to find that balance. And in the workplace, I think the one thing we can do as leaders is to lean into that conversation and take note when people are struggling, when we can see people feeling overwhelmed, when they're not performing at their best, when they're away from work, really leaning into the conversation and asking, how can I help you? And looking at how the workload is distributed, what can be chunked down into smaller pieces. So as leaders, there's absolutely a role to play, and as individuals, it's knowing when to put your hand up for help and to say, I'm not coping right now, I'm feeling burnt out, and I really need you to help me. And that conversation between leaders and their team members is absolutely critical.
Marissa, I found your role fascinating. On a personal note, what drove you into this role and your place in the industry?
Really good question. A couple of years ago, I was at an industry breakfast, and somebody was talking about the changing nature of work and the increasing pace of change, the increasing rate of interconnectedness of people being unable to switch off. And this was pre-COVID. This was before we knew what was going to happen with working from home and the constant feeling of being switched on. And it was a light bulb moment for me because I could see this happening myself. I could see my phone was binging at night, my emails were coming through, and that desire to get more balance back. And the world of work is not what we knew. So for us as an organisation and for me personally, I knew that we needed to pivot and really focus on how do we support people holistically to bring their best selves to work and to take their best selves home for their families and their loved ones.
The phone pinging. Yeah. According to a recent study, the attention span of adults in the year 2000 was 12 seconds. In 2021, the average attention span for an adult is 8 seconds. What do we actually mean when we're talking about work-life balance? And what are your top tips to getting that balance right?
Turn your phone off. But I think when we talk about work-life balance, it's not the same thing for every person. And you need to think about what's your why. What are the big things that are important to you, and then to prioritise those in your life and how you organise your life. For me personally, I don't have children, but it's going to be having the opportunity to spend time with my parents as they get older, or pick my niece up from school, or get to my Pilates class, which I really need to do. For other people, it is going to be spending time with their family. And so it's understanding what is important to you, and as Juliet said, it's going to change throughout our life all the time. And then looking again to have those conversations with the people in your life who can make the balance happen. It might be your partner, and talking about how you arrange your life and your childcare and responsibilities, or your attendance with your parents. It might be talking with your leader at work and talking about different work patterns that will help you fit in all of the things that are important to you in your life. But it's having that critical thought about what's important to me right now and how can I make it happen.
You learn so much about consistency from being a parent, especially consistency of expectations. If you have a question for Marissa, click on the speech bubble at the bottom of the screen and include Marissa with your question. We'll have time at the end to answer these questions. We've looked at your financial wellbeing and mental wellbeing at work. Now it's time to think about mastering your mind and body. We know the value of being healthy, but making a change and sticking to it can be really difficult for some people. So how do we navigate this, especially with Christmas and Christmas parties just around the corner? Gina, this is where you come in. Why do so many people try and fail to maintain a healthy weight or be healthier in the long term? What are we getting wrong?
Oftentimes we use very fad diets or very extreme kind of methods to try to achieve what we want to achieve, because we're impatient and we want things to happen now. The problem with that is those methods are often not very sustainable, and they're going to be requiring a lot of sacrifice from us, whether that be socially or financially, and it's really hard to do that. Our brains are only capable of changing up to 3 things at once. But if you think of the last time you may have set New Year's resolutions or wanted to set out a goal for yourself, you probably wanted to overhaul your life. You want to get fit, lose weight, save more money, get a better job. There's so many things that we try to achieve. But because our brain's not capable of doing that, we tend to get overwhelmed. And we know that when we're overwhelmed, we do very little. So one of the ways to achieve that is to start small, is to just set a small goal. And once that becomes a habit, then build on that goal and make it bigger or longer or whatever it might be. And then add more goals and more things that you want to achieve. But I think the human brain goes, oh no, I'm a high achiever, I can do more. And we want to do all these things. We don't realize that actually just one thing at a time is the best way to go.
So the human brain can only process 3 changes at once. Is that what you said? That was such a light bulb moment to me, because I know a lot of our to-do lists are a hell of a lot bigger than 3 things. And then we wonder why we're so overwhelmed with our to-do list and can't get the momentum to tick everything off.
That's right. And then we sort of become down on ourselves. We say, oh, I failed this, or I've got no willpower, when actually we've run out of steam. Our brain is just not helping us get over the line. And that's what it's meant to do. It's a protective mechanism.
Your advice makes me feel we should be a lot more forgiving of ourselves. And Christmas can be a really tough time of year for people trying to be healthier. What strategies can you help people approach the festive season without spiraling out of control?
Food food is socializing around food. It's part of our social makeup. And I think Christmas is a wonderful time to really gather with our community again. And I know for a lot of people it creates a bit of anxiety and a bit of a bit of dread knowing that we're entering into this season. We do tend to eat more at Christmas, of course. We eat more when there's more people around. We eat more when there's more variety on the table, and we eat more when we're trying to restrict ourselves. So it's completely counterproductive. So a couple of really good tips around this is remembering that Christmas is only one day. So trying to limit the amount of leftovers that you might have, because otherwise you might be having leftovers for the whole week. I know I once ate trifle literally for the whole week. Making sure that you're doing some active things with the family. So gathering around for some backyard cricket or going down to the beach and doing some movement together. And also, again, just not having the expectation that this is a time where you needing to be losing weight or needing to be restricting. Enjoy the day, enjoy Christmas, but just remember that it's one day and it's really about gathering with family.
I hear you mention the word weight and dieting. I feel like diet culture and the pressure on improving your body image is just as prevalent as ever, but I feel like it's shifted. You see #Fitspo everywhere, all over social media. It seems that strong is the new skinny. Do you believe that this is just diet culture rebranded? And for me, it seems that you need that visibly toned look now, low body fat while still having boobs and a bum. It's almost harder to maintain and manage than the heroin chic of the 2000s.
Completely, and I'm so glad you raised that, because it's definitely creating more and more pressure, and we've seen things like eating disorders, for example, really take a huge increase in the last few years. And although it's a great intention to be fit, it's also an even better intention to be healthy, and whatever that looks like, it's not likely going to be seeing veins through your abs. Only there's a very small, tiny proportion of the population that can achieve that naturally. So, you know what? Unfollow and turn off your social media if it makes you feel rubbish. I unfollow anybody that makes me feel not good about myself. I just want to embrace my body, focus on my health rather than my weight, focus on eating food I know is going to nourish me, focus on moving my body in ways that I enjoy, and resting and sleeping and getting some sunshine. And all those fundamental things are really what we need to be focusing on the most.
Absolutely. How can you set goals or resolutions so you'll achieve them? And do you have a good example of one, a goal you could set?
Yeah, sure. I mean, every person is going to have their own personalised goals as to what works for them. But one of the ways that you can achieve a goal is, again, starting small. Research shows that when you start a goal and you set a really big goal, you start to lose motivation. But when you set a really small goal, you also lose motivation because you're not being challenged enough. So you want to set a goal that you know you can achieve, but isn't pushing you too much. So I give the analogy sometimes of having a tennis match together. So Liz, say you and I are playing tennis together and we're point for point and we have the same skill level. You know that you can win if you're motivated enough. If you just give it that little bit more oomph, you can win. But if I was to get off the court and I was to bring in, say, Serena Williams or some amazing tennis player, you'll probably feel a bit deflated, like, oh, I don't think I can actually win that. The same thing as if I pulled Serena off and I brought in like a 4-year-old child. You're not going to want to give it your all to really want to win that game because it's going to be pretty easy. So one of the things with setting goals is to find what I call the point of comfort. It's just the edge of comfort where the goal's not too hard, but it's not too easy, and you know that you need to just stick with it. The key to habit change is consistency. It's always consistency over intensity. One of my favourite quotes is, consistency is the secret sauce to changing habits.
I love that. I'm going to read you one of my favourite quotes now. Yeah. It's by Dr. John Maxwell. You can always predict someone's long-term success if they show you their daily habits.
That's it.
That sums up pretty much exactly what you've just said. Talking about habits, what's one habit you'd like us to stop when it comes to our mental or physical health?
I think, again, this is a really personalised thing. You know, one habit that you might do that might be really beneficial for you might be quite detrimental for me. So there's not really one habit I will say, oh, you should stop doing that. You know, I know that last year when we first were starting to work from home, I wanted to start a meditation habit and just to reduce some stress levels. So I downloaded an app that would help me to do some mindfulness. And honestly, it made me more stressed because
I did the same.
I was really struggling. I was like, I just can't concentrate on this. What's wrong with me? Did you find that the same?
Absolutely. It was just more pressure for one more thing to have to have achieved in the day.
Completely. But then I found if I was just to step outside in my garden, you know, I live on acreage, step outside and play with my puppy for 5-10 minutes, that completely de-stressed me, and that's all I needed. I achieved exactly what I wanted to achieve, but I did it in a different way. So I would say form the habits that work for you, break the habits that don't, and don't worry about what anybody else is doing.
So true, because I keep hearing about the benefits for meditation, but I think my meditation is a moving meditation. I know that when I paddle out and have half an hour in the surf, I never come in not feeling better. Like I'm always in a better mood when I come out. Or if I go horse riding, and both surfing and horse riding are passions of mine where you cannot be on your phone and you have to be present. Like if you're stiff riding a wave or stiff riding a horse, you're going to come off, you're going to fall. So I think it's similarities to meditation where you actually, it's about being present.
Sure.
Yoga is one I also discovered before having children. I loved running. I loved action and adrenaline sports, but I think my life is so fast now with a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old boy at home. I've discovered yoga, and yoga seems to be very diagnostic to me. I'm not only just stretching out my body, but I seem to also be stretching out my mind in that hour, really calming down, slowing down. So it's incredible. I really do encourage people to explore what their meditation is. It's not necessarily an app.
Absolutely. And you know, it's whatever habit is no longer serving you, that's the habit you want to break. And it might have served you once upon a time and it no longer is. So just shift things up.
Talk to me about willpower. Is there such a thing as willpower?
Yes, there is such a thing as willpower. So willpower or self-control, we sort of use the word interchangeably. If you think of willpower like a muscle, let's say you're at the gym and you're doing a set of bicep curls. Eventually your arm's going to get sore and you need to put that dumbbell down and rest your arm before doing another set of lifts. And willpower works in exactly the same way. The more you use it, the more exhausted that it gets. So no wonder after a long, hard, emotional day, the last thing you're going to want to come home to is chicken salad. I mean, give me cake, cheese, and the extra glass of wine.
It's so true. I was just hearing you put in situ willpower, and it also reminded me of something else. I think so often we can relate to someone who comes into work that might have a cast on their arm or have pulled a muscle, have some physical damage over the weekend. Yet with mental damage, someone who might have had a loss in the family or is suffering the effects of true grief, we seem to have to cover that up because we might look weaker in the workplace, but physical injuries is something we can boast. Would you agree with that? And where do you see that moving in the future?
Yeah, I've definitely seen more of a shift around appreciating and acknowledging mental health, but we're not there yet. I think we're doing a better job than we used to, but we're not there yet at all. And I know that, for example, I've heard some stories where we've had, for example, the Are You OK Day, and somebody said, I'm not okay, and then there's a, I don't know what to do with that. So there's not like that next step of really being able to support our workforce and our community, but I think we're getting better.
Marissa, if I can go to you on that one, do you have anything to add to that when it comes to the workplace? And I mean, if someone's damaged their knee, you don't strap it and go running on it. So if they've had a mental health damage like grief or a loss, you can't go running on that.
That's true, and I really agree with you, Gina. We're improving, but we're not there yet. And every year at QSuper, we're thinking about ways we can change that and move that dial, and celebrating Are You OK Day is great, but then equipping our people with the skills to know what to say next. And the Are You OK Day organisation has fabulous resources around what to say next and how to follow up if you're not sure. But we've also instituted a network of mental health first aid officers, so that if someone is struggling at work, there's a safe space to go to talk to a peer, a colleague, or to phone our employee assistance program. But again, it is, as leaders, how can we lean in when someone is not mentally well and find the ways to support them which will resonate, which will enable them to come to work and be at their best. And it might mean we've got to take things off a plate for a while before we put them back on, to change working arrangements. And the key to that happening is having the conversation. And it's okay to have that conversation and making sure it's really okay to say, I need help and there are things going on for me, and not to be ashamed of that.
Thank you for answering that. That's great to hear. It's now time for Juliet, Marissa, Gina and myself to answer your questions. Please click on the speech bubble icon at the bottom of the screen to send through your questions. If you'd like a particular member of the panel to answer, please flag who the question is for. So we have a question from Helen. Firstly, Helen, thank you so much for joining us today. What is presenteeism?
Presenteeism.
I'm going to work on my articulation of that.
Yeah.
Say it once more.
Presenteeism. So it's turning up. It's turning up. So it's the opposite of absenteeism. So we always talk about people being away from work because it's noticed. But when people are turning up constantly, they're switching on early in the morning, you'll see their little green light come on Teams, and they're online at 6:30, and you know they're online until 9:30 at night, and they're working those really long hours. And you also know that perhaps they're not well, or you might know perhaps they're feeling burnt out. That's presenteeism. It's turning up because you're unable to switch off sometimes, or you feel that you're not allowed to switch off. And it's something to pay attention to as a leader, because we need to enable people and we need to support people to manage their workload to get to that balance that we're talking about. And that presenteeism is really damaging for individuals, so we need to pay attention to it.
Love learning a new word. Written that one down. This question is for Juliet, financial advice. My daughter has just graduated and is going into her first professional job. How can she get support for setting her finances up correctly in a first job situation?
Yes, look, that is very important, and I think to get your children onto that pathway of being more in control of their own financial situation is great for any parent. So basically, with the superannuation and the superannuation funds, I know with QSuper they do have an intra-fund advice team that you can actually phone. It's free for people to be able to do that, and they sort of give very sort of specific and limited advice around superannuation, making sure you are sort of set up correctly for them. Again, starting healthy habits with your financial situation. So financial well-being comes from sort of understanding your inflows, your understanding that you can pay your bills, having cash reserves, making sure you've got insurances in place and superannuation as well as estate planning. So there's a lot in that for children to start learning. So just taking that one step at a time, ring up the super fund, see if you can sort of get some information around how your funds are invested, how your funds are going into super, etc., making sure your funds are going into super. All of those sorts of things are really important, but just that basic healthy habits, again, making sure you understand budgeting and setting aside a little bit for savings and continuing to sort of gain knowledge. So, putting them, say, as a parent, it wouldn't be a bad idea to sort of say, okay, well, I'll pay for you to go and see a financial advisor to sort of get you on track and get you started in that, taking control. Because I really think specifically for every woman, you are your own financial asset, and your child needs to understand that she needs to know that she is the only one who is truly in control of her own financial destiny. So making sure she is engaged right from the very beginning in doing that. And setting up good financial routines, same with healthy physical and dietary routines, it's very important.
Juliet, we talk about entering at a first job situation, but there's also an exit for many women when it comes to maternity leave. I remember myself facing maternity leave, I felt very overwhelmed because I've always prided myself on being financially independent, and to consider taking 4 months off where I might have to lean into someone else for financial support didn't sit comfortably with me. Any tips for navigating that?
Look, I think you are not alone in that. A lot of women are the same. They don't like to sort of have to take that time off, but it is a reality, and yes, we do have to do it sometimes, and you do have to step back and be able to be there and have your children and get yourself well and physically able to return to work. So sometimes, yes, you do have to take that cut, but it's only for a period of time. You have to remember that. And I know when I was faced with that situation, I struggled with it as well. I tried to make up in different areas. I tried to make sure that I wasn't spending money in areas that I didn't need to. I just made sure that I was really looking after the household side of things, and that was financial control in that situation. And then I went back to work, and then I started getting my own income, and thank goodness for that. Because it isn't a good feeling to not have your own financial security.
But you're right, it's the one thing we have to be forgiving of, that it is physically not possible to work and create finances for yourself while birthing a baby.
Exactly. You do have to have a little bit of time for yourself and for your baby.
Beck has directed this question to Gina. How do you talk to your significant other about starting new healthy habits? What habits might be a good place to start doing together? This sounds like someone who wants to kick their husband into gear.
That's a great question.
Or am I reading too deep into this?
Well, relationship psychologists will probably tell you to make them think that it's their idea. But you really just want to lead by example would probably be one of the best things. Is start the habit that you want to do together, and just start small and just, make little comments about how good you're feeling or, how great it's been. But at the end of the day, we will only be motivated intrinsically, which means we have to want to do that thing to actually be able to do it long term. If somebody's motivated to do something for you, they will do it for a short period of time, but it won't be sustained long term. So just make them think it's their idea, and you should be right.
That's a great tip. Very interesting.
Interesting. It was interesting actually what you were saying about surfing, and also it's funny, I do mountain biking, and it's similar to surfing, and it's an exercise, yes, but it has that mental well-being side to it, because, I'm going out into the bush and I'm in the sunshine, same with playing with the dog and that sort of thing.
You can't be on your phone.
No, you can't be. You absolutely have to be completely present on the bike, or you're going to fall off. And, you're there as the sun rises and the birds are chirping, and that's the thing, you're building out that routine, but, you have to do it for yourself. If someone wants to join in, like your partner wants to join in, that's great, but sometimes they don't. So just still get in and do it, for yourself, because it's such an incredible part of your own mental well-being.
Marissa, the next question is for you from Sandy. What do you do for relaxation?
I was thinking exactly the same thing, Juliet, that it's those things where you're completely engaged in them. And I recently took up pottery classes on a wheel, and I had no idea how difficult it was to actually shape up a pot. And as soon as you stop paying attention, it all collapses on itself. You don't fall off the bike or fall into the water if you're surfing. But it's a similar concept, that it's a very mindful activity you have to focus on and be present in. And I find it fascinating that it's those activities that we actually get relaxation from, where you're fully engaged in them, and that you have a break from your normal day-to-day life, and that's when you come back feeling refreshed, isn't it?
They are so energy charging.
Yes, I might start that, because the way that the only time that I feel I'm completely meditative is when I'm in front of a really heavy barbell.
Yeah.
But I mean, pottery sounds much more fun.
Or animals, they call you out. I can't tell you, whenever I go to work with the horses, because I do a lot of work with retired thoroughbreds, if I'm stressy or anxious, they don't want to borrow with me. I actually have to calm myself down and go into them, in a positive way. And it's incredible. They pull you out of it. So,
Amazing.
Yeah. This question is directed to me. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate you joining us here today. Oh, what is your go-to healthy meal? Yikes. I'm going to go with balance, because I have to admit that I am not always the cleanest eater, but definitely since having children, I find myself really busy, and I've shifted my mind frame. The way that I eat, it's more for fuel and to keep me going. And I actually found that I've made healthier choices just by thinking that way, like what's going to give me more energy to get through the next 4 hours while I'm, running school drop-offs or taking them to the park, or, I was on the beach the other day. It's summer's around the corner. It's heating up. The sand was really hot for the first time, and I've got Finn, my 3-year-old, and the sand's too hot for him to walk on, so I'm carrying him in one arm, and then my 4-year-old's crying that his feet are burning. I can't blame him because my feet are burning. And so I'm carrying my 4-year-old, I'm carrying my 3-year-old. People are looking at me like I'm crazy, but I can't put either kid down. You've got to get home for sleep time. And I just appreciated in that moment, as much as it hurt, that I had strength and was able to get myself out of that situation. And often when I'm approaching food these days, my motivation is this strengthening me? Is this fueling me? So long answer short, I do go for more high protein options these days, whereas I would have loved, a bowl of muesli or toast for breakfast. Now I'm quick to fry an egg or scramble some eggs and think this will keep me going longer. So that's been a big shift for me. What about for you ladies? A healthy meal option?
I'm like you, I'm a bit lazy. I'm an absolute fan of Woolies, and they have those ready-made salad bags. You can put them together. There's a cow slaw, throw a bit of salmon in, and it's good to go. Anything that's quick and easy like that and pre-prepared these days, absolutely.
Yeah, cooking's a bit of a chore. All that effort, and then you just eat it and it's gone. I'd say cleaning, right? It's more permanent after you've done the work. Is it? Well, for a little while. Julia, this question is for you. If you want to make a change to your financial well-being, how important is getting your partner or family member on board? Good question.
It is, and it is important to try and be, if you are in a partnership with somebody, then you do need to actually sort of get them on board and be going in the right direction, because oftentimes I see one client is the spender and the other client's the saver, and it does make for a lot of difficulties in relationships. So it's an important thing to try and get them on board, but to be honest, if you can't get them on board, the next best thing is to make sure you are in control and you are looking after the financial situation for yourself, and hopefully that partner will be impressed with your own sort of what you're doing, and then they will come on board too. But definitely you do need to try and make sure you're looking after yourself.
Gina, what's the most powerful habit you can form? Actually, one of my questions I've written down for you today, because I was hoping to benefit from these chats, of course, is what is one daily habit that could revolutionise my results over time? That's what I was thinking about earlier this morning while I was drinking my coffee.
I like it. Probably the most habit you can form, and you might not like this, is movement. It's exercise. When you exercise, you have a rush of endorphins. You sleep better, you concentrate more, you know, you improve your overall general well-being and you reduce your feelings of anxiety and stress and depression. So it is so powerful exercise, and it doesn't have to be going to the gym if that's not your thing. It could be hula hooping. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's just about increasing your heart rate and doing some movement every day. That is the most powerful habit. And I would say the second most is sleep, making sure you get good amounts of sleep. Sleep is one of the most underrated things that you can do for your body, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do for your well-being.
Absolutely. Hi Juliet, how do you find affordable financial advice about your whole situation? I recently separated from an abusive partner. I'm sorry to hear that. And in the financial separation, I looked for advice, but I couldn't find anything affordable.
Yeah, look, you know, I do have a lot of female clients, and they've been through the same situation, and oftentimes they've sort of come out of it, you know, so strong and so, you know, in a financially secure situation. But yes, the cost of financial advice, I must admit, is getting higher because there are a lot of costs involved. If you can, you know, again, go to your super fund and see if you can get some financial advice just over the phone. But if you're looking for comprehensive financial advice, you do need to ring around and just see what people are offering. Financial advisors will always have, you know, an initial appointment. Usually it's obligation free, and you can come in and you can see them, see if you're going to fit with them, and they then will tell you exactly how much the fees will cost. And also, like I know with us, we can actually deduct fees from the superannuation funds if it's around their superannuation funds. So that can give you a little bit of a help in getting affordable financial advice.
Thank you. Marissa, this next question is for you. If you have identified issues with your supervisor and no adequate response has been given, what next? I'm currently off work due to burnout. This person has been in their career for 40 plus years. They're known for their resilience and tolerance and their hard work ethics. They really need to address the issue in the workforce and recognise, we were talking about this, a bruised brain is just as debilitating as a broken leg. Marissa, what advice would you give to this guest?
Yeah, to Tracy, I'm really sorry to hear you're having such a rough time at the moment. I think at different periods we all struggle. When we're in that critical stage and that really critical moment, we need to look for help. And if it's not coming from your direct leader, from your direct supervisor, it's to talk to the other people in the organisation who may be able to assist. It could be someone from your people and culture or your HR team, or it might be your leader once removed. And as much as that might be a little bit intimidating and it can make you feel quite vulnerable, it's to reach out to those other people around you who could potentially help.
I might add to this as well for you, Tracy. I know that I'm a bit of a people pleaser in the workplace and I hate saying no. I'm very quick to say yes, even if it means completely putting my own life out and my family's life out, because I was raised to prioritise work, and that it's a real honour to, you know, be in a workplace. Tim Ferriss has this quote, make decision making a binary process. If it's not a hell yeah thanks, it's a no. And I've found as hard as it is, sometimes learning to say no starts to create a new momentum from feeling burnt out to moving up. Would you agree with this, Gina?
Oh, completely. You know, one of the quotes that I have started to use and use it because it's really good is, if I say yes to you, then I've got to say no to something I've already committed to. I mean, write that one down because it works really well. Yeah. Because I find if you say that to people, they understand that you're at capacity, and if you do any more, we're going to burn out. And I certainly can relate to the finding it difficult to say no and wanting to do all the things. And, you know, that's part of climbing up the ladder in some organisations. It's part of putting forth your personal brand and doing all of that. But if you're not coming from a place of well-being and you're coming from an empty tank, then you're not really any good for anybody.
And Juliet, running your own business, I imagine it must be very hard to say no at times.
Very much so, especially in the first year of our own business. So yes, it is. And I think that, you know, you probably do tend to take on a little bit more than you should. And that's where I do balance things out with the other parts of my life, and I do make sure that even though I'm tired, I will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a mountain bike ride, because for me, that sort of sets me up for the rest of the day, for me to be able to provide financial advice and to provide peace of mind and financial well-being to my clients. I have to be physically well, I have to be mentally well, and to be able to do that, I do need to take that time and get myself in the right space before I go into the office.
Finding your sugar hits. It's mundane, you could say, but the sugar hits come from those moments.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
riding.
Yeah.
This question is from Jess. Hi, Jess. Thanks for joining us. Habit building. Do you have any tips for how to start building change habits whilst also managing anxiety around the need to change? Interesting one.
You know, we are so comfortable in our habits. We're comfortable in our routines, and that's why up to 85% of everything that we do is what we do every day, and only sometimes do we do something different. You might find that you eat a similar breakfast every day, or you park in the same spot at work, or you sit in the same spot to eat your dinner. It's things that you don't even think about, but you do routinely. And because we find comfort in our habits, sometimes changing habits can exacerbate our anxiety or make us feel a little bit unsettled or a little bit uncomfortable. And that's completely normal. And I think the first step is acknowledging this is going to feel slightly uncomfortable. You know, I ran a study where one of the interventions was called Do Something Different. And the participants were sent a text message of a random thing to do on a random day at a random time. And I'm talking things like listen to a different radio station today, or drive a different way home from work. And just by reshuffling and reorganizing their schedules and their days, they started to feel more empowered about doing different things, and actually realize that we increase our sense of well-being when we're doing different things, because although we're comfortable in the routine, we can also become very complacent in our routine. So my tip would be just to start really small with things that seem insignificant, and that could be literally like drinking a cup of tea instead of a coffee, or sitting on a different spot on the couch when you're watching telly. Just reorganize things a little bit, and that'll increase your feeling of I can do this and this is safe and I feel okay, and then you can tackle bigger things.
Gosh, I wish I had you in my life back when I was competitive surfing and had to have, you know, got paranoid if I got the blue rashy for my heat instead of the white one, or those also superstitious habits and superstitious routines, like making sure that you kind of had waxed your surfboard in a certain way. It's so true. Bringing it back to sitting on a different part of the couch to watch television at night shows you have the power to make those changes. And it's all okay. It's all okay. This is from Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Financial advice directed to Juliet. Juliet, is super the best option to place savings into? I'd love to know this too.
Yeah, not always. No, and that's you know, again, we have to have the general advice warning there. But to be honest, everybody has different goals and objectives around what they're saving for. Now, it might be that you're looking to save for your first home, or you might be looking to save for your children's university, or, you know, that you have a flexible way to retire. You might not want to work right up to preservation age. So then you need to sort of look at what your goals and your timelines are and your risk profiles and choose an investment. And so superannuation, while it is extremely important, is not the only place to save.
Okay, good to know. This question is directed to Marissa from Tila. We talk a lot about leaders supporting their teams. What are some ways that team members can support their leaders if they look like they're struggling? Wow, I'd love to have you on my team, Tila. You sound like a great colleague to have.
And it's that concept of what can you do for others, isn't it? It's really powerful, and it's a really kind thought as well. Leaders are human beings, and they have a lot on their plate. And if you can see that your leader needs help, ask, how can I help you? What can I do that's going to make your life easier this week? What's one piece of work you want me to prioritise? And ask the question, because it's quite a burden being a leader at times, and having to have all the answers, or feeling like you need to have all the answers. It's not the case. So ask, I think, is the best response to that.
The next question is directed to myself. It's what are some of the things you do to manage your work-life balance? Except that I don't think there is such thing as balance, might be at the top of it. It's very hard to find balance, but I learnt through the late stages of my pregnancy and the early stages of having a newborn, what you said, how critical sleep is and how much I benefit from exercise. Yeah. If I feel strong, I'm better for my family, I'm better for my workplace. So for me, I do prioritise that I do need to exercise and look after my health, and that might not be hard exercise, that might be light exercise such as yoga, but a couple of times a week. And it's unbelievable how when I do prioritise that hour, even if I feel like I'm tearing myself away from the kids for that hour, I come back a better mother. And I do the same thing, I walk into my workplace a better colleague. So yeah, that's how I'd answer that one. Awesome. Gina, how do you course correct when you're tired, when you've tried really hard to put habits in place but they haven't stuck? Course correct.
Yeah, great question. So one of the things to know about habits is that they are always triggered by something else. So a couple of examples of that is when you sit in the car, you automatically put on your seatbelt. It's not something that you really need to remind yourself of doing anymore. Or first thing in the morning, as part of your daily routine, you might brush your teeth in the morning. And that's, again, not something that you need an alarm for. So the trick here is that habits require 3 key ingredients, and they are a trigger, the habit itself, and then some kind of reward. Putting on your seatbelt is the habit, but the trigger to that is sitting in the car. Brushing your teeth is the habit, but the trigger to that is your morning routine. So oftentimes we try to change our habits and our behaviours, but we're not associating a trigger to it. We're not actually setting either a time of day or a place or a social situation to it. So I would reassess, when are you trying to do that habit? Are you just trying to remember it? Because then that's using willpower, which we've learnt before is a fleeting resource and tends to run out. Or are you actually triggering that habit? So one of the ways that I would give advice for that is, as an example, if you want to eat more fruit, you might say, at breakfast time, I will eat 1 piece of fruit. And at the beginning, you might need to set an alarm or some sort of reminder to do that. But the more you do it, the more breakfast will be the trigger to you eating a piece of fruit, and you'll no longer have to actually remind yourself and use willpower and think about doing it. It will just happen.
You can see why you're experts in your field. Thank you so much, ladies. I hope that your words have been a warm blanket for many people out there watching today. I know they certainly have been for me. Thank you for joining us for She's on Q's virtual-only event. I really hope that you leave here feeling empowered. Thank you again to these incredible women who have sat by my side and shared so freely today. The recording of this virtual event will be available later to view on demand. You can also check out your previous panels online at shesonq.com.au, as well as more new and inspiring content for professional women. That's it from me. Wishing you a happy and healthy end to the year. Stay safe.